DEA headquarters, Washington, D.C. A room full of federal agents applauded. General Manuel Noriega steps to the podium. That same month, $2 billion in Medellin. Cartel money is flowing through Panamanian banks. Noriega's cut, $1 million every 30 days. His soldiers guard a cocaine lab in the Darien jungle that's flooding Miami, Houston, and Los Angeles simultaneously. The DEA isn't honoring an ally. They're handing a medal to the man running the pipeline they're supposed to destroy. The CIA had him on payroll since 1967, paying $100,000 a year. DEA agents built airtight cases against him and were ordered to stand down. For 23 years, America's intelligence community made a calculated decision. His usefulness outweighed his crimes. They trained him in counterintelligence at Fort Bragg, gave him classified briefings on Congress members, protected him from rivals who might neutralize him. And the whole time, he was selling their secrets to Fidel Castro. 3 buyers, the CIA, the Medellin cartel, and Cuban intelligence, each paying for exclusive access to the same man, each convinced they controlled him. How did the CIA's most trusted asset become the one man they built, protected, and then needed 27,000 soldiers to silence? By 1966, Panama is a country built around a ditch. The canal is the most strategically valuable 50-mile corridor on the planet, and whoever controls Panama's military apparatus controls access to it. The CIA needs a native officer willing to feed them intelligence on the leftist movements spreading south from Cuba through Guatemala, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Colombia. They need someone ruthless enough to be useful and hungry enough to stay bought. They find Manuel Antonio Noriega. He is 22, a cadet at the Corrillos Military School in Lima, Peru, training alongside the men who will shape Latin America's next 4 decades. He is acne-scarred and ferociously ambitious. What impresses his early CIA handlers is his precision about value. He understands that information is a more durable currency than loyalty, and he prices himself accordingly. By 1967, he is formally on the agency's payroll. Congressional testimony later establishes payments of at least $100,000 per year in a country where a colonel's annual salary barely clears $10,000. Noriega climbs through Panama's National Guard and becomes Chief of Military Intelligence under General Omar Torrijos, the strongman who seized power in a 1968 coup. The arrangement is ideal for Langley. Their source now sits at the intersection of every classified cable flowing through Panama's government. American case officers slip him envelopes. Noriega delivers dossiers on leftist organizers from Mexico City to Buenos Aires. The relationship is transactional, and both sides understand the terms. Through the 1970s, the CIA trains him in counterintelligence, feeds him assessments of guerrilla networks, and insulates him from domestic rivals who might otherwise neutralize him. They know from their own surveillance reports that his intelligence unit uses torture, that political opponents disappear under his watch, that his personal finances are growing faster than any government salary can explain. The CIA files those reports and keeps depositing. Every year, Noriega survives inside the government. He stores more knowledge of CIA methods, personnel, and operations. He is not simply an asset. He is a growing archive. Then comes July 31st, 1981. Omar Torrijos boards a de Havilland Twin Otter at Coclé Airport for a short domestic flight to Panama. The aircraft drops into the mountain fog above Coclecito and does not come out. The crash kills everyone aboard. Official cause: instrument failure. No investigation is conducted by any agency. No agency requests one. Within 14 months, Noriega has maneuvered every rival out of position and assumed effective control of the Panamanian Defense Forces. The CIA's paid informer has just become a head of state. Does the agency possess enough leverage over a man who now commands an army to control what they built? And what does Noriega do the moment he seizes power that confirms he has been playing a longer game than anyone in Langley anticipated? By August 1983, Noriega formally installs himself as commander of the Panamanian Defense Forces and the country's undisputed strongman. The civilian president is a prop. Noriega controls the army, the police, the intelligence services, and more critically, the banks. Langley's calculus is immediate. An asset who was an informer is now an asset who runs a country. Useful has upgraded to indispensable. CIA payments continue. In 1983 alone, U.S. delegations meet with Noriega's office no fewer than a dozen times. The Cold War logic is clean. A friendly dictator is better than an unfriendly election. Simultaneously, the Medellin cartel is running into a geography problem. U.S. Coast Guard and DEA surveillance is flooding the Florida Straits with aircraft and fast intercept boats, compressing the Caribbean corridor that has moved Colombia's cocaine north for years. The cartel needs new infrastructure. Panama's jungle airstrips, its dollar-denominated banking system, and its position sitting directly between Colombia and Central America make it the most valuable piece of real estate in the drug trade. Escobar's financial lieutenants reached Noriega through intermediaries in 1982. The terms require no negotiation. For every plane load of cocaine granted safe passage through Panamanian airspace, Noriega collects between $100,000 and $200,000. Money laundering through Panama's national bank runs at a flat 2% commission. Within 18 months, Panamanian banks are processing an estimated $2 billion in cartel funds annually. His personal monthly income from cartel fees alone exceeds $1 million. When Colombian authorities begin pressuring Escobar and the Ochoa brothers following a series of high-profile assassinations, the cartel's senior leadership temporarily relocates to Panama City. Noriega provides safe houses in the capital's suburbs and issues undocumented passports in exchange for a reported $4 million lump payment. He then agrees to something more profitable and more permanent. The cartel wants a cocaine processing facility on Panamanian soil, a laboratory complex where Colombian raw materials can be refined into export-grade product before shipping north. Noriega's soldiers provide security for a facility built in the Darien jungle near the Colombian border, funded through a $5 million payment to Noriega personally. The CIA station in Panama City files a report on the lab's existence. The report reaches Langley. No action follows. Noriega is also selling compartmented intelligence to Fidel Castro's Directorate of Intelligence in Havana, passing CIA assessments on Latin American communist networks directly to the government. Those assessments were designed to counter 3 separate buyers. One man. Each buyer convinced the arrangement is exclusive. The CIA files accurate reports describing all of this, and the calculation holds, because removing Noriega means losing the intelligence stream, means exposing the relationship, means answering questions no one in Langley wants asked in a Senate hearing room. What the calculation does not account for is Hugo Spadafora. Spadafora is a Panamanian physician. He resigned his medical practice to fight with the Sandinistas in Nicaragua against the Somoza dictatorship, not for money, not for ideology in the careerist sense, but out of a conviction that some things are simply worth fighting for. He is the kind of man who makes intelligence agencies nervous, not because he is dangerous in any conventional sense, but because he cannot be bought, and he cannot be managed. By 1985, he has assembled detailed testimony from cartel insiders, Panamanian military officers, and former associates of Noriega himself. He has a name, account numbers, airstrip coordinates. He announces publicly that he intends to return to Panama and present his evidence. On September 13th, 1985, Hugo Spadafora crosses the border from Costa Rica into Panama at the Paso Canoas checkpoint. He is pulled off an intercity bus by men in civilian clothes. He is never seen alive again. His body is found stuffed inside a U.S. mail sack near the Costa Rican border. He has been tortured. His head has been severed. The State Department receives a full report. The CIA station in Panama City files an assessment. No sanctions follow. No diplomatic communications are downgraded. The calculation holds. In Washington, Hugo Spadafora is processed as an acceptable externality. His family buries what they can recover, and every institution that knew what happened returns to its regular schedule. What does Noriega demand in exchange for the next layer of protection, one more dangerous than guarding cocaine labs? And what secret becomes so catastrophic that it makes him legally untouchable inside the United States for 3 more years after agents have the evidence to indict him? October 1984. Congress passes the Second Boland Amendment. The language is unambiguous. No U.S. intelligence funds may be used to support, directly or indirectly, the overthrow of Nicaragua's Sandinista government. The Reagan administration treats this as an engineering problem, not a prohibition. The Contras, anti-Sandinista rebels operating from bases in Honduras and Costa Rica, need weapons, training, and a money supply that cannot be traced to Washington. The CIA cannot wire their funds directly. The NSC cannot openly coordinate logistics. What they need is a cutout, an entire sovereign country as a cutout. Panama becomes the hidden architecture of the Contra support network. Panamanian military facilities provide training for Contra units that cannot legally operate from U.S. installations. Bank accounts inside Panama's financial system receive diverted proceeds from the covert arms sales to Iran, the Iran half of the Iran-Contra mechanism, and those funds move toward weapons procurement for the Nicaraguan rebels. Cargo flights routing guns south carry manifests listing agricultural equipment. The pilots are on a CIA contract. The airstrips they use are the same jungle strips as Noriega leases to the Medellin cartel. One infrastructure, 2 cargo streams, both are illegal. One man collecting fees from both. In 1984, CIA Director William Casey flies to Panama City. The meeting is not on his public schedule. Picture the room: 2 men who understand precisely what they are to each other, and precisely what they cannot say. Casey has read every CIA station report filed from Panama City going back years. He knows about the Darien lab. He knows about the Cuban intelligence payments. He knows Noriega has been passing CIA assessments on Latin American communist networks directly to the government. Those assessments were designed to counter. He knows about Hugo Spadafora, the surgeon pulled off a bus, the mail sack, the Costa Rican border. Noriega knows Casey knows all of it. Casey knows Noriega knows he knows. What neither man says aloud is the calculation that makes the meeting possible in the first place. They need each other more than they distrust each other. Dismantling Noriega means dismantling the Contra supply chain. Dismantling the supply chain means Congress finds the receipts. Finding the receipts means criminal exposure at cabinet level. So, Casey shakes the hand of a man responsible for the decapitation of a Panamanian doctor, and the meeting ends, and both men fly back to their respective capitals, and the operation continues. This is deniability at its most complete form. No written agreement, no recorded instruction. 2 men in a room in Panama City who understand that silence is the price of the relationship continuing, and that the relationship continuing is worth more than any individual cost the relationship imposes on people neither of them will ever have to meet. If this keeps you up at night, subscribe. The next video is already waiting. Every story we cover is built on primary sources, and it only gets more precise from here. The feedback loop accelerates. Daily cocaine shipments replace the occasional plane loads of 1982. Noriega's personal net worth climbs into hundreds of millions. His paramilitary force, the Dignity Battalions, beats opposition journalists in the streets and dismantles polling stations. The May 1984 presidential election is openly stolen. Noriega's candidate loses the popular count by a clear margin, and Noriega's officers simply alter the tallies. U.S. Ambassador Everett Briggs cables Washington that the election has been fraudulently decided. The State Department acknowledges the cable and sends Vice President George H.W. Bush to the fraudulent inauguration anyway. The signal Noriega receives is the clearest of his career. You are untouchable. He starts to act like it. By late 1985, DEA field agents in Miami have compiled witness testimony from cartel insiders naming Noriega by name, account number, and airstrip coordinates. Senate subcommittee investigators request the CIA's files on Panama. The CIA delivers redacted versions. One DEA supervisor later testifies under oath that a senior CIA official called him personally in 1983 to shut down a Noriega investigation, citing national security equities. The case is shelved. The calculation holds. It has been held for 18 consecutive years. How long can a secret held simultaneously by 17 separate agencies remain secret? And what finally forces the public reckoning that every one of those agencies had spent a decade actively preventing? June 12, 1986. Seymour Hersh publishes a front-page investigation in the New York Times. The headline does not use the word allegedly. Hersh has flight logs, bank records, and witnesses. He identifies Noriega directly as a drug trafficker operating with the knowledge of U.S. intelligence. The story lands inside a Washington already fracturing under the weight of Iran-Contra revelations breaking that same autumn. The cover doesn't hold it. It detonates. Senate Foreign Relations Committee investigators, led by Senator John Kerry, spent the following year assembling what Hersh sketched in a single article. They pull Swiss account records, interview cartel defectors who have agreed to cooperate, and subpoena CIA station reports from Panama City going back to 1979. The picture that emerges is not negligent. It is documented, deliberate inaction. Agents who filed accurate reports and were ordered to stand down. DEA prosecutions shelved by Justice Department officials citing national security. A system that functioned correctly at every technical level and was manually overridden at every political one. February 5, 1988. A federal grand jury in Miami hands down a 12-count indictment. Drug trafficking, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. A sitting head of state, a man who received a DEA commendation 11 months earlier, in the same building is named as a federal criminal defendant. He nullifies the May 1989 Panamanian presidential election after the opposition candidate, Guillermo Endara, wins by a margin too large for even Noriega's talliers to reverse on paper. The day after the vote, Noriega's Dignity battalions attack Endara and his two vice presidential running mates with iron rods in a Panama City street. The photographs Endara bloodied, his white shirt soaked red, run on front pages across the world. The Organization of American States condemns the violence. Noriega ignores it. George H.W. Bush, who attended the stolen 1984 inauguration and had received CIA briefings directly from Noriega during his tenure as vice president, is now president. His administration imposes economic sanctions. Panama's economy contracts by 9% in a single year. Noriega shrugs. He controls the banks. Through autumn 1989, U.S. Panamanian military relations deteriorate into daily confrontation along canal zone perimeters. American vehicles are stopped at checkpoints. Service members are harassed. On December 16, 1989, Marine First Lieutenant Robert Paz refuses to stop at a checkpoint near the La Comandancia compound in Panama City. Panamanian soldiers open fire. Paz dies at Gorgas Army Community Hospital at 11:57 p.m. That same night, Navy Lieutenant Adam Curtis and his wife, Bonnie, are detained at the same checkpoint. Curtis is beaten. Bonnie Curtis is threatened and sexually assaulted during detention. Joint Chiefs Chairman Colin Powell briefs President Bush the following morning at Camp David. The calculus has finally inverted. The cost of keeping Noriega in power now exceeds the cost of removing him. Operation Just Cause is authorized. What no one states publicly is the second logic driving the order. Noriega, stripped of protection and facing federal trial, could talk. Every CIA operation he hosted, every Iran-Contra routing channel run through Panama, every conversation with visiting White House officials, all of it is in his memory and in safes his lawyers might access. A controlled arrest flowing into a U.S. federal proceeding, where testimony can be managed and certain evidence kept classified, is measurably safer than a defiant fugitive selling 20 years of American covert operations to Havana or Bogota. The invasion is not only a military operation, it is evidence management. What does a man who has spent 20 years reading American intelligence do with the hours he has left? And what does the one move Noriega make in that window to reveal who, in the end, understood the rules of the game they had all been playing? December 20th, 1989, 1 a.m., Panama City. 27,000 U.S. troops, Rangers, Special Forces, Marines, 82nd Airborne execute simultaneous assaults on 27 targets across Panama. The largest American military operation since Vietnam targets a defense force of fewer than 16,000 men. The strategic logic is compression. Destroy every Panamanian Defense Forces command node within the first 90 minutes before organized resistance can form. The 82nd Airborne drops onto Torrijos International Airport. Army Rangers seize Rio Hato Military Airfield 75 miles west. Marines secure the Pecora River Bridge to cut off PDF reinforcements moving toward the capital. AC-130 Spectre gunships orbit La Comandancia Noriega's headquarters compound in the El Chorrillo neighborhood and open fire with 105mm howitzers. El Chorrillo burns. The neighborhood is dense wooden tenements, civilian housing built wall to wall around the military compound Noriega chose as his power center. U.S. Southern Command's official count is 202 Panamanian civilian deaths across the entire operation. Independent Panamanian human rights organizations document figures between 500 and 1,000. Bodies continue emerging from rubble for weeks. The residents who survive lose their homes and are warehoused in aircraft hangars at Albrook Air Station while the U.S. military organizes relief operations. Noriega is not at La Comandancia when the howitzers hit. He spends 4 days cycling through safe houses in civilian clothes, carrying $20,000 in cash and a 9mm pistol, while the U.S. military posts a $1 million reward for his capture. Out of options, out of safe houses, out of officers willing to shield him, he does the one thing U.S. military planners had not fully accounted for. On December 24th, he walks through the gates of the Vatican's diplomatic mission on Balboa Avenue and requests asylum. U.S. forces surround the building within hours, but cannot enter. The Pentagon's solution is sustained psychological pressure speakers mounted on armored vehicles outside the perimeter of blast rock music continuously, day and night. The Vatican's nuncio, Monsignor José Sebastián Laboa, eventually delivers a plain message. The Holy See will not grant permanent asylum, and surrender is the only exit that ends with him alive. January 3rd, 1990. Noriega walks out in his general dress uniform. Hands raised. The trial opens in September 1991. Prosecutors present records from a Swiss account holding $23 million in verified cartel proceeds. His total personal fortune is estimated between $200 million and $800 million. The range is that wide because investigators have not located every account. Cartel accountants testified that the monthly payment structure was formalized in writing, with Noriega's personal authorization documented in at least 3 memoranda. On April 9, 1992, the jury convicts him on 8 of 10 federal counts. The sentence is 40 years. He serves 17. extradited to France in 2010, convicted on separate money laundering charges, extradited to Panama in 2011, where a Panamanian court convicts him for the 1985 murder of Hugo Spadafora, the surgeon whose name you have been carrying since Chapter 2, whose decapitated body was found in a U.S. mail sack. Noriega dies in a Panamanian hospital on May 29, 2017, at age 83. Now let's account for what the verdict doesn't cover. No CIA officer is charged. No NSC staffer faces a jury. The DEA supervisors who killed investigations on instruction are identified by name in the Kerry Committee report and never indicted. The U.S. government prosecutes the asset and quietly retires the handlers, the Darien roots. Noriega established the cartel to continue operating after his arrest. The Panamanian banking infrastructure built around narco laundering is partially reformed and never structurally dismantled. The CIA's practice of maintaining intelligence relationships with foreign criminals deemed operationally useful does not end with his conviction. It is refined. The final accounting is not a 40-year sentence. It is not the $23 million Swiss account. It is not the $163 million in direct military expenditure or the 23 American soldiers killed in action. The final accounting is El Chorrillo. Listen to what that means precisely. The residents of that neighborhood did not vote on whether Panama's banks would launder cartel money. They did not authorize Noriega to build his headquarters in the middle of their block. They did not sign off on the CIA's decision to protect him, or the NSC's decision to run Contra supply chains through his airstrips, or the State Department's decision to attend to his fraudulent inaugurations. They lived where two institutions decided to build an empire. And when a third institution decided the only way to close the ledger was with 105 mm howitzers at 1 wake a.m., they were the ones who lost their homes. One woman who survived described what she came back to find: the walls of her street, the address where she had lived her whole life, reduced to a foundation outline in ash. She said, the men who built the neighborhood into a fortress and the men who burned it to the ground were both gone. She said what remained was everything that had been underneath both of them, all along the same routes, the same money, the same silence. She was right about the silence. The Noriega case is documenting proof of something that sounds like a conspiracy theory until you read the Kerry Committee report cover. This was not an intelligence failure. Intelligence failures happen when agencies lack information. Every American agency involved had complete, accurate information. CIA station officers filed correct reports. DEA agents built legally airtight prosecutions. Senate investigators found everything they were looking for. The system produced correct intelligence at every stage. The system then chose at every stage to ignore it. What the Noriega case documents with unusual precision is institutional cost accounting applied to human life. His operation killed people not abstractly, but in the specific overdose wards of American hospitals, and in the Colombian villages where the cartel consolidated territory through assassination, and in the street outside the Paso Canoas checkpoint, where a man named Hugo Spadafora was pulled off a bus. American agencies knew this in real time. They calculated that Cold War objectives in Central America outweighed those costs, and they kept making that calculation for 23 consecutive years. The CIA did not manufacture his ambition or his brutality. Those were native. What they created was the architecture of his impunity, the budget, the training, the diplomatic insulation, and 14 years of institutional cover that allowed a street-level informant to scale into a head of state running a $2 billion criminal enterprise with the tacit protection of the most powerful government on earth. The empire built on cocaine outlived the dictator who built it. It outlived the Cold War that justified it. Parts of it are still running. This architecture didn't end with Noriega.